that's not good.
Got this slick little echo blower for 10 bucks. The guy had it, couldn't get it going, and I think he just had it a couple years. So he said if you want it, you can have it, 10 bucks. So I have no idea what's wrong with it. I think it's probably been sitting a long time. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the old gas in it. That doesn't look good. Maybe that's all it needs. Put some fresh in there. Looks a lot better. See if we can get it to fire. That'd be something if that's all it was. Well, obviously we got fire. Otherwise it wouldn't run like that. But I can get nothing out of the throttle, and we're dumping gas out. So let's take it to the workbench and take a closer look at this. We'll do a little disassembly, make it easier to work on. Set that aside. Pull the air filter cover off. This thing looks brand new. Filter's nice and clean. Just takes a star bit, Torx. Pop this off. Disconnect the fuel line. Primer bulb looks okay. Let's set this aside. I think the carburetor is probably the problem. We will hook up our fuel lines. There's our idle screw, and the low screw is always closest to the engine, and then the high screw is the one closest to the air filter. And we'll fuel it up and adjust the carburetor and see how she runs. Hopefully it'll fix it. Turn on, choke on. Something's not right, we're not pulling any fuel. Well, that didn't work out so good. And my problem is I can't adjust the carburetor. This tool is so small, and the nubs in the screws ended up rounding off because it was a little sticky in there. I tried to take the carburetor off, and I cut slits in those little heads of those screws, and they're so small I'm unable to work with it. So I'm unable to adjust the carburetor. If I could adjust the carburetor, I think I'd be fine. So I'm going to have to go ahead and order a new carburetor, and we'll go from there. Even though this is an echo blower, it's just a little cheap residential one. they're not real reliable and they don't last too long. On the other hand, this commercial grade echo blower is phenomenal. We bought this 39 years ago and haven't had to do anything with it, other than it got dropped once and cracked the tank and had to order a new tank for it. All right, I ordered a carburetor, and I found, this came off eBay, but I found if you order these things, not just a carburetor, but you get other things with it, they end up being cheaper. So it came with some fuel lines and fuel filter, carburetor, and I had some choices on this carburetor, and I got the one with the old traditional adjustment screws. You can just take a regular flathead screwdriver and adjust those screws. I like that. First thing I want to do to make this easier to work on my workbench is remove this extension pipe, and there's a little clip underneath here. You just stick a screwdriver in there and push up, and it releases that clip. You can pull that out. Now let's take the carburetor off and put the new one on. Pull the filter cover off. Pull the filter off. A couple torque screws in here. Releases the carburetor. And I'm going to pull this choke cover off. Your choke works off of that. See that there? There's a gasket on the back of this. You want to make sure to leave that on. Here's our carburetor. There's a throttle linkage bar right there. We'll need to release that. And you just twist the carburetor just a little bit, and that comes off. And then it's just a matter of releasing the fuel lines. This is the supply line here, and then this one goes to the primer bulb. You don't want to hook these up reverse, so make sure you remember the order of these. This longer one goes to the supply, and the shorter one goes to the primer bulb. Hold the carburetors up, and it's a little different design, but pretty much the same. Got my two adjustment screws that I'll actually be able to adjust now. Idle adjustment screw, primer bulbs on the bottom. Fuel line. Should work. I could change the gaskets, but that looks fine to me. And don't forget to hook up your throttle linkage. Just pops in that little hole there. Sits just like that. And hook up the fuel lines. We got one hooked up, and the other one for the primer bulb. There we go. Put the filter and the filter cover back on. Good. Remember, you only run 2-cycle fuel in these. You have to mix the oil and gas. If you run straight gas in this, you'll burn up the engine. You'll score the piston and the cylinder wall. Make sure you put in proper fuel mix. I'm going to run the primer bulb here. It should fill. There we go. Start to. That's just pushing gas into the carburetor. Looks like everything's operating well. Let's take it outside and see if it'll work. Okay, here we go with try number 2. Got it all primed. Primer bulb is full of fuel. Choke on. Switch on. Got about half choke now. Almost. I'm going to turn the idle up just to get it going. Now we'll go ahead and adjust the carburetor. We'll do the low side first, then the high side, and then we'll set the idle. That's why I like to get a carburetor where I can adjust the screws, the low and the high. The way this came, it didn't run very well. A little minor adjustment to the carburetor, and it's running great now. If this video was a help to you, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and I look forward to helping you with other projects online.